I remember the day I first met Grayson as if it were yesterday. I was perched in a little dive cafe, nursing the cheapest cup of coffee they offered, trying to make sense of my jumbled thoughts and figure out my next steps in life. Suddenly, he walked in, and it felt like a scene straight out of a movie, though there were no dramatic lights or background music, just the jingle of the doorbell and the mingling aromas of stale coffee and his sharp aftershave. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, gesturing to the chair across from me with a smile that could disarm anyone. I tried to play it cool even as my heart raced. "Looks free to me," I replied, doing my best to sound unbothered by his unexpected presence. As we began chatting, it felt like we were perfectly in sync, as if we were cut from the same cloth. He was into all the quirky things I loved, from binge-watching cheesy TV shows to lively debates about the best pizza toppings, pineapple, by the way, which he defended with passion. Fast forward a bit, and what began as casual outings blossomed into a serious relationship. It felt like I'd known him forever, and before long, we were discussing the possibility of marriage. That's when things took a turn. His parents were a whole different story. Meeting them for the first time felt like stepping into a lion's den. They had this unsettling way of smiling at you while sizing you up, as if assessing whether you were worthy of their time. "So, you're the girl Grayson can't stop talking about," his mother said, her tone sweet but laced with an edge that made me uneasy. "Guilty as charged," I replied, trying to keep my composure despite the tension. It wasn't long before they laid down their rules, insisting that Grayson and I sign a prenup. I was no gold digger, I didn't need anyone's money, but the manner in which they approached the subject rubbed me the wrong way. "I'll sign your prenup," I said firmly, "but I have one condition. If either of us cheats, the cheater pays the other $200,000. Grayson looked stunned, as if I had just slapped him. "Babe, I would never cheat on you," he said, wide-eyed and serious. "Yeah, well, my ex said the same thing right before I caught him in the act," I shot back, making it clear that this was non-negotiable. "It's this or nothing," he agreed, albeit reluctantly, and his parents did too, though they looked as if they'd swallowed something bitter. We thought that would be the end of the drama, but boy, were we mistaken. One evening we were cuddled up on our old, worn-out couch, the one we swore we'd replace 100 times but never did because it felt like our spot. The TV was on, but we weren't really watching it. We were too busy dreaming up plans for a trip to Italy, a journey we knew we couldn't afford but were determined to make happen. "Grayson, think about it, the food, the wine, the art. We have to go," I said, my eyes sparkling with excitement. He laughed, pulling me closer. "Tessa, babe, you had me at food, but let's be real, our bank account is more suited for camping in the backyard than a romantic getaway to Venice." I playfully nudged him. "We'll save up, we'll cut back on things we don't need, like, I don't know, your video games." He pretended to be horrified. "Not the video games. Take my shirts, my shoes, even my coffee maker, but not the games." We burst into laughter. That was us, always dreaming big yet staying grounded in reality. We didn't need anything fancy to be happy. Our joy lay in the little things, like Grayson attempting to make breakfast on Saturdays. He couldn't cook to save his life, but somehow he had mastered scrambled eggs and toast, albeit served with a side of awful coffee. Still, I cherished those mornings. "Hey, I'm thinking scrambled eggs today. What do you think?" he'd ask, already heading to the kitchen. "Just promise not to burn the toast this time." I'd yell back, adding, "And I'm making the coffee." One day, the topic we had been tiptoeing around finally surfaced. We were doing the dishes together, a simple task that felt special because we were side by side. "Tessa," Grayson said, breaking the comfortable silence, "we need to talk about starting a family." I paused, the plate still in my hand. "I know, it's scary, isn't it? What if we can't?" Grayson turned to me, drying his hands on a towel. "Then we'll handle it together, but we won't know unless we try, right? I mean, how hard can it be?" I laughed, a mix of nervousness and love bubbling up inside me. Famous last words, babe, but that was our mantra. No matter what life threw at us, we faced it together, even when his mom started dropping not-so-subtle hints about grandchildren at every opportunity. "Tessa, darling, when are you going to give me some grandbabies?" she'd say, her voice dripping with sweetness, though her message was anything but. "You're not getting any younger, you know." I'd force a smile, biting my tongue. "We're working on it. Aren't we, Grayson?" He'd always jump in to defend me. "Yeah, Mom, relax. These things take time." That's just how we were, taking it all in stride together. But as the year wore on, the pressure began to mount, not just from Grayson's mom, Marlo, but from within our own hearts. We wanted a family so badly, but it just wasn't happening as easily as we had hoped. Ever since Marlo discovered her new hobby of making my life miserable, our home had turned into a battlefield, and her weapon of choice was her sharp, unforgiving tongue. What had started as occasional snide remarks had transformed into a daily assault on my confidence in my role as a wife. Things came to a head one Sunday at lunch, a day that was supposed to be laid back and peaceful. Marlo, with her impeccable sense of bad timing, showed up uninvited just as we were about to sit down. The atmosphere instantly tensed the moment she walked through the door, her eyes scanning the room as if preparing for a military inspection. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she began, her voice dripping with sarcasm as her eyes flicked over the simple meal I had prepared. "You've really outdone yourself, Tessa. I can tell you've been slaving away in the kitchen all morning." Her gaze met mine briefly, the corners of her mouth lifting into a smug smirk. I forced a smile, determined to keep the peace. "It's nothing fancy, Marlo, just something quick and easy. Please have a seat." But as soon as we settled down, she wasted no time launching into her usual routine. "You know, Tessa," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "I was talking to Mrs. Henderson the other day, and she mentioned that her grandson was just born. It got me thinking, when are you and Grayson going to give me some good news? It's not like you're getting any younger." I could feel my face flush with a mix of embarrassment and anger. I glanced at Grayson, silently pleading for his support, but he suddenly found his plate incredibly interesting. "Mom, come on," Grayson muttered weakly, though we all knew it was half-hearted. Marlo pressed on, relentless. "Grayson dear, I don't mean to be harsh, but you're not a charity. You work hard for your money. Why waste it on Tessa if she can't even fulfill her basic duties as a wife? A cleaning service and a cook would be much more efficient, don't you think?" That's when I snapped. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Marlo, I'm trying my best here. It's not like I don't want kids. And as for the house and my cooking, I didn't realize marriage was a service contract." Marlo scoffed. "Well, it's not a free ride, either. You have responsibilities, Tessa, ones you're clearly not living up to." The air in the room felt thick with tension, and I could feel tears staining the back of my eyes. But what hurt more than Marlo's cruel words was Grayson's silence. Finally, he spoke, but his words cut deeper than any criticism. "Yeah, Mom has a point. Maybe we should think about getting some help around here. It'd make things easier for you too. Easier for me." His words felt like a knife in my back, making it painfully clear that I was fighting this battle alone. Over the next few days, Marlo's visits became more frequent, and with each one, her criticism grew sharper. She'd inspect every corner of the house, pointing out any tiny flaw. "You call this clean?" she'd scoff. "My eyes must be playing tricks on me because this looks like a pigsty." Then came the jabs about my appearance. "Is that what you're wearing? You know a wife should dress to please her husband. No wonder Grayson is always so tired. He has to come home to this." I tried to stand up for myself. "Marlo, I don't dress for Grayson. I dress for myself, and he's tired because he works hard, not because of what I wear." I shot back, but it felt like I was talking to a brick wall. Marlo had already made up her mind about me, and nothing I said would change that. The worst part wasn't even her constant criticisms. It was Grayson's refusal to take my side. After each of her visits, we'd argue. "Why won't you stand up for me, Grayson? She's walking all over us and you're just letting it happen. She's old, Tessa. She's set in her ways. What do you want me to do? Kick my own mom out?" "No, I just want you to be my husband, to stand by me instead of her." It was becoming increasingly clear that this issue extended beyond Marlo's disapproval. It was about our marriage. It was a test of whether we were strong enough to stand united or if we'd let her harsh words tear us apart. As days turned into weeks, I realized this wasn't just a passing phase. It felt like we were under siege, and if we didn't act soon, there might not be anything left to save. Things between Grayson and me had grown chilly ever since Marlo ramped up her campaign of criticism. But it wasn't just the tension at home. Grayson had started acting strange. It wasn't the usual stress from work, it was something deeper. Something that made my stomach twist with unease. It all began with the phone calls. Grayson had always been open about his phone. We didn't keep secrets from each other. But recently, every time his phone rang, he'd step out of the room, and the caller ID consistently displayed the same name. John Work. "Who's John Work?" I asked one evening, trying to keep my tone casual. Grayson flinched, a clear sign that he was on edge. "Oh, just a new guy at the office. Lots of questions, you know." But it didn't stop there. Grayson, who had never cared much about his appearance, suddenly started paying attention to how he dressed. Gone were the old graphic tees and worn-out jeans. Now he wore crisp button-up shirts and slacks, along with a new splash of cologne. Since when did he care about smelling like a department store? As I watched Grayson get ready one morning, I couldn't help but notice the new clothes, the cologne, and his sudden focus on his appearance. It wasn't like him at all. What's with the new look? I thought, trying to brush off the nagging unease that was growing inside me. Got a job interview or something? I joked, attempting to keep the mood light. But Grayson smirked a little too quickly. Just felt like changing things up. No harm in that, right? But it wasn't just his clothes that were different. The late nights at work were becoming more frequent. He'd send me texts like, "Babe, sorry. This project is killing me. I won't be late, I promise." But the clock would tick past midnight, and I'd still be waiting, pretending everything was fine. I tried to dismiss my worries, convincing myself it was just work stress, but the feeling that something was off clung to me like a shadow. That's when I did something I never thought I would. I hired a private detective. It felt surreal, like something out of a bad TV drama, but I had to know the truth. When the envelope arrived, I stared at it for what felt like hours before finally mustering the courage to open it. The contents were as heartbreaking as they were damning. Photos of Grayson with another woman, their intimacy unmistakable in each frame. They looked happy, wrapped up in a world that didn't include me. But it wasn't just the photos. The recording was the real dagger. I listened to their conversations filled with endearments and plans. They weren't merely having an affair. They were in love. At least Grayson was in love with her. I sat there, the evidence sprawled before me, my heart breaking piece by piece. This was it, the proof that could shatter our marriage and plunge me into a stormy divorce if it came to that. But I wasn't ready to confront him yet. I needed a plan, a way to navigate this wreckage with my dignity intact. For days I carried this secret like a heavy stone, pretending everything was normal. Grayson continued his charade, and I played the role of the perfect wife, smiling, cooking, cleaning, all while the weight of the truth crushed me from within. Our conversations became rehearsed, each word measured carefully. We danced around the elephant in the room, pretending everything was fine. "You've been quiet lately," Grayson said one evening, his concern sounding almost genuine. "Yeah, just tired. Work's been crazy," I lied, the words bitter on my tongue. It was just another day until it wasn't. I was passing by Grayson's office when I heard voices. The door was slightly ajar, and I paused. It was Grayson and his mother, Marlo. Their conversation wasn't casual. It was heavy, laced with something darker. "I'm telling you, Mom, I can't do this anymore." Grayson's voice came through, strained and exhausted. "It's not just about the kids. I've lost all feeling for Tessa. It's like we're just roommates, not husband and wife." Marlo's response was sharp, dripping with her usual disdain. "Well, of course you feel that way. She hasn't given you a child, and let's be honest, what else has she brought to this marriage? But let's not rush things. My 68th birthday is coming up, and we wouldn't want to miss out on a generous gift from her, now would we?" Her cynicism twisted like a knife in my gut. They were conspiring against me, using me until it was convenient to toss me aside. Grayson's voice turned cold and calculating. "And after we get that nice, expensive gift, we can kick her to the curb." "Right, exactly, dear," Marlo confirmed, her voice oozing malice. "Just bide your time a little longer." I stood frozen, the realization crashing down on me. They were planning my exit from this family as if I were nothing more than a disposable item on a grocery list. The hurt ran deep, but it ignited something else within me, a burning desire for revenge. They thought they could use me and then throw me aside. They were sorely mistaken. I wasn't just a pawn in their twisted game. I was determined to show them exactly what I was capable of. A few days later, during a family dinner, Marlo, with her signature smirk, brought up her upcoming birthday. "So, Tessa, dear, what are you planning for my birthday? Something special, I hope?" I met her gaze, my expression calm and composed. "Actually, Marlo, I was thinking of throwing you a dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant. A night you won't forget." Her eyes lit up with greed, and she exchanged a quick, satisfied look with Grayson. They thought they had me cornered, but little did they know I was already 2 steps ahead. "Oh, Tessa, that sounds delightful. Just close family, you know, to keep it intimate," Marlo said, her voice fake and sugary sweet. "Of course, Marlo, it'll be our pleasure," I replied, hiding the smirk threatening to break free. The words tasting like poison on my tongue. The weeks leading up to Marlo's 68th birthday felt like a slow march toward my own personal D-Day. Every smug comment from her and every indifferent shrug from Grayson only fueled my determination. The plan was simple yet audacious, like something out of a movie. Host a lavish dinner under the guise of a loving gesture, then drop the bombshell the night before the party. The tension at home was palpable. Grayson, completely oblivious to the storm brewing, lounged on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Everything set for tomorrow?" he asked, not even bothering to look up. "Oh, you could say that," I replied, my voice calm, masking the turmoil inside me. When the day of the party arrived, the luxurious dining room I had reserved filled with guests, the air thick with anticipation. My heart raced, not from nerves but from the adrenaline coursing through me. Marlo basked in the attention as usual, lavishing praise on the restaurant. "Oh, Tessa, you've outdone yourself. "This place is exquisite," she exclaimed, loud enough for everyone to hear. As the meal progressed, conversations felt forced, the laughter hollow, but I played along, knowing what was coming. As the dessert plates were cleared, the waiter discreetly approached me with the bill. $66,000, he whispered. Without a second thought, I handed over my card, the gesture unnoticed by most. Just as Grayson's smirk spread across his face, he decided it was time to make his move. "Tessa," he began, his tone cold and detached. "I think it's time everyone knew I'm tired of this, of us." The tension between us had been brewing for months, but Grayson's declaration caught me off guard. "I want a divorce," he said, his words hanging in the air like a toxic cloud, sucking the noise out of the room and leaving only suffocating silence. I sat frozen for a moment, my mind racing to process the weight of his statement. Before I could respond, Marlowe, ever quick to twist the knife, chimed in. "Well then, since that's out in the open, I think it's best you leave, Tessa. We're celebrating family tonight, and you're no longer part of it." The room fell deadly silent, all eyes turning to me, waiting for the inevitable collapse. But instead of crumbling, I stood with a calmness I didn't truly feel. Without a word, I nodded and walked out, the cool night air hitting me like a slap as I left behind the only life I had known for years. Each step home felt heavy, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. By the time I reached the apartment, no, his apartment, a plan began to take shape in my mind. There was no time for tears or sorrow. I packed quickly, numbed by the cold resolve settling over me. This was the end of one life and the start of another. As I zipped up the last suitcase, my phone buzzed with a relentless vibration. I ignored it at first, but curiosity got the better of me. When I saw Marlowe's name flashing on the screen, her sharp voice filled my ear. "Tessa, the payment didn't go through. You need to fix this now." Oh, the irony. In my preparations for the inevitable, I had blocked the shared account, knowing it would be the first thing Grayson would try to use against me. I let the words sink in, savoring the moment before replying calmly, "That's unfortunate, Marlowe. But since I'm no longer part of the family, as you so eloquently put it, you'll have to figure this one out." Her outrage exploded through the phone, her words dripping with venom, but to me it was music. I could already picture the chaos unfolding at the restaurant, staff demanding payment, Marlowe throwing tantrums, and eventually the police arriving to calm the scene. It was a fitting end to the sham my marriage had become. The next morning, with divorce papers in hand, I returned to what used to be our shared home for one final time. As soon as I stepped through the door, the tension in the air was palpable. Grayson and Marlowe were already arguing, but when they saw me, their hostility turned into a united front. "You've got some nerve showing up here after last night." Grayson spat, disbelief and anger etched on his face. Marlowe, ever the viper, hissed in agreement. "Ungrateful wretch, you embarrassed us in front of the whole city. Do you know how humiliating it was to have the police show up? People were laughing, filming." I met their fury with a calm I didn't truly feel. "Embarrassed? You think that's your biggest problem right now?" I tossed the divorce papers onto the table, the damning photos of Grayson's affair landing on top. "You should be more concerned with this." Grayson's face went pale as he picked up the photos, Marlowe peering over his shoulder. Their anger shifted to shock, then panic, as the reality of their situation settled in. "And let's not forget the prenup, shall we?" I added, my voice cold. "You cheat, you pay, $100,000 to be exact." Marlowe's face twisted into a snarl. "You wouldn't dare. You can't do this to us." "Oh, but I can, and I will." Realizing the gravity of the situation, Grayson switched tactics. "Please, let's talk about this. We can fix it." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound escaping my throat. "Fix it? You think you can undo all of this with a few words? No, Grayson, it's done." Marlowe tried her manipulative approach, her voice softening as she oozed fake concern. "Tessa, darling, think about what you're doing. This will ruin us." I stared at her, my resolve unwavering. "That ship has sailed, Marlowe. You should have thought about that before." Their pleas grew more desperate, but I had already made up my mind. I was done being their pawn. In the end, Grayson had no choice but to borrow money from his parents to pay me. As I left the house for the last time, check in hand, I felt an unexpected lightness. The weight of their betrayal had been lifted, and I was finally free. With the payout, I secured a small but cozy place of my own. It wasn't grand, but it was mine, a sanctuary from the chaos of my old life. Life was quieter now, and I liked it that way. I had a job that kept me busy, friendly neighbors who waved in passing, and a little garden that I could tend to with care. Every now and then, a tidbit of news from my old life would trickle my way. Just the other day, while grabbing coffee at a local spot, I bumped into someone from the old neighborhood. After the usual pleasantries, they leaned in, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Have you heard about the latest drama with your ex and his mom?" I raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. Can't say that I have. Do tell. The gossip was delicious. Apparently Grayson's new girlfriend wasn't faring too well with Marlowe. They fought like cats and dogs, making my situation seem like a walk in the park. As I walked away, coffee in hand, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Once, news like that would have sent me spiraling, but now it was just another piece of someone else's drama. These days, my biggest worries revolved around whether my tomatoes would ripen before the squirrels got to them or if I'd ever master yoga without looking like a newborn deer on ice. Life was simpler, quieter, and infinitely sweeter on this side of chaos.